Good evening, folks, and welcome to another edition of Crime Time with DutyRon and Ed Wallace. We are retired New York City police detectives, and if you like all things true crime related from the police detective's perspective, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, so you'll get all things DutyRon and this guy, Ed Wallace, over here when we go live or upload another video. Tonight, we're going to talk about Stephen Smith. The second autopsy. It's going to be explained by our forensic anthropologist, Dr. Murray Marks, and Barbara Butcher from the New York City Medical Examiner's Office. She's the retired chief of staff, a legal medical death investigator, and we are looking to give you guys some really good information tonight to give you an overview on what's in store in the future for this autopsy. Ed, we welcome you back. Everybody missed you tremendously. I know the chat's going wild. How are you doing? We miss you. We love you. Let everybody know what's been going on with you, Ed, and condolences again on the loss of your sister-in-law.
Yes. Thank you very much for that, folks. I really felt your love the other day about the loss of my sister-in-law. So she's the second person in my wife's family to succumb to Alzheimer's. It's a very terrible disease. My mother-in-law lived with us for 12 years fighting that disease, and it took her life as well. So that said, it's good to be home. So my last trip was in India, and I got back about last Saturday, and I've been home for a week. I did some work in Brooklyn, and then I took this week off because next week I'm on the road again.
Wow!
And so I'll be out flying out to Moldova to do some work out there.
Ed's always teaching and training other folks in different jurisdictions and outside the country. As we can see, he's on a whirlwind tour, but it's a good thing, Ed. So we appreciate the time that you spend here with us, and everybody missed you. This is really a troubling case going back to 2015. Stephen Smith, July 18th of 2015, found in the road by a passerby early in the morning. 911's called, local police come out there, detectives. Fast forward to today, yesterday, classified as a homicide. It was reopened in 2021 when Alec Murdaugh was being investigated for the murders of his son and his wife, and SLED opened up the investigation, but it was never reclassified. And just yesterday, it made breaking news that it was reclassified. A lot to unpack here, Ed, but it's right up your alley because you're a crime scene unit expert. And we'll get into it on another show, but tonight's video is going to be all about this second autopsy and what they're going to be working with. And if you suffer from PTSD, Ed and I are going to tell you, we're going to talk about some details tonight that involve human remains and so forth. So if you feel like, this is not something for you, then I would ask you to maybe step out or to take another opportunity to come back and watch the replay. But Ed, any thoughts on this basically before I show this little video?
Yeah, there's a lot of disturbing things here that I was doing my research and come across. But when we say it has been reclassified as a homicide, I'm going to hold off on that until Barbara gets on and Dr. Marks gets on, because by law, there's only one entity that can do that, and it's not SLED. Okay, so let's talk about that a little later when we bring our guest on, because then that has, like I said, different legal connotations here. The SLED can say we're treating this as a homicide. Okay, that's fine. But to be classified as a homicide, that's totally different.
Yeah, and there you have it. And we're going to listen to this little piece here on Newsnation. I don't think we'll listen to the whole thing, but I just want you guys to get a bit of an overview of what we are going to be presenting to you. So let's do that, and then we'll bring our guests right on.
Attorney. He's a legal analyst. He is with us this morning. It is complicated. It is sad. All of these deaths linked back to this family. Buster now denying any involvement. And we should point out this is the first time he's spoken publicly about any of it, claiming his innocence and no involvement in the death of Stephen Smith. So let's start there. The evidence that led Stephen Smith's case to be reopened, re-examined. Attorney representing the family says they want to exhume the body. They essentially want to start this investigation over. How challenging will that be 8 years later?
Hey, Marnie, great to be back with you. I mean, it's very unusual to have a body exhumed, especially 8 years after the person dies. But what you can gather from a body that's 8 years old, I did a little research on this. If a body is under 10 years old, you still have soft tissue that can be examined. You've still got bones around the skull because Stephen Smith had a head injury. You can also analyze that. So one thing that you might be able to glean from exhuming Stephen Smith's body is the cause of his death, right? Because it was reported that it was through a hit and run car accident. If that happened, one would expect, for example, bruising in the legs or the ankles or even the torso if a car hits you, and possibly broken bones, not just a head injury. So I think there's a good basis to exhume his body to find out the cause of death, but I think it's going to be a big jump and leap to try to link this death somehow to Buster and or Alex Murdaugh.
What do you make of the fact of Buster responding to this? Does it surprise you? Does it add fuel to the fire for the family? What do you make of the timing?
No, not at all, Marnie. I think Buster's doing the right thing. If he believes that he had absolutely nothing to do with Stephen.
All right, I'm going to stop it right there because the rest of this is nonsense. You heard what he said. This is an attorney now, obviously not, as somebody in the trade. He's talking about, a time period of 10 years that you could still have soft tissue. We're gonna yield to the professionals on this one. So Ed, you take over with the introductions, and I'll add them in as you introduce them.
Well, we have our fan favorites here. Barbara Butcher, former chief of staff for the New York City Office of Chief Medical Examiner under Dr. Hirsch. And also we have with us another fan favorite from Tennessee, our forensic anthropologist, Dr. Murray Marks.
And there they are.
Here we go, folks.
Thank you, guys.
All right. So every, and her book again is, what's the title of the book?
Who, mine?
Yes, yours.
It's called What the Dead Know.
Okay, and it'll be out in June, right? You can pre-order it now on Amazon.com. And Murray has been very busy since the last time we've had him on. He's been moving around Tennessee. So Murray, why don't you fill the folks in on what you're up to now?
Well, our forensic dentistry program has now moved over to Lincoln Memorial University, and they're really keen on some graduate programs we're putting together on human identification, a master's and a PhD program, and this is a wonderful environment. We're including DNA, forensic anthropology, and forensic dentistry into our program. So really exciting times. I still do the work at the Regional Forensic Center in Knoxville, so really busy.
There you go.
And you know what, Barbara? I want to say Ed knew the title of your book. He just wanted to make you say it so everybody could hear you say it.
That's right. Remember, we had that contest to name your book.
That's right.
There
That's
you
right.
go. Yeah. Hey, I want to just quickly just pass this over first to Dr. Murray Marks. You just heard this attorney, Brian Claypool. He's a legal analyst. And again, he made that broad statement of 8 to 10 years, and you could still get soft tissue. You're a forensic anthropologist. Can you talk on conditions down in the Deep South in South Carolina? This young man, Stephen Smith, was interned in 2015 and is going to be exhumed here in 2023. What are we looking at? And I know you can't say definitively, but could you just give the audience just a little bit of an overview of what would be the state of the remains here?
Well, that really depends, Ron, on the state of the body going in, and of course the embalming. Embalming can preserve remains for a good long period of time. It can provide the pathologist with a lot of information or completely deny the pathologist that information. But the bones are going to be keen to tell you everything. And of course, the anthropologist works for the pathologist. We're brought in when he or she needs us to answer the questions that they're after. But decomposition-wise, that's a really tough call. It depends on what took place as far as the embalming is concerned. I've been party to probably half a dozen exhumations where I've been surprised and I've been not so surprised at some of the remains, some of the soft tissues that are there. So it's really a rough call at this stage as to what the pathologist will find.
Now, Murray, when it comes to a fatal car accident, pedestrian car type incident, what type of bone damage or skeletal structural damage would you might find here?
Well, in that you'll find what's probably synonymous with blunt force trauma, but to most of the skeleton, of course, depends on the speed of the vehicle and the location of the victim and things like that. But for the most part, you're going to have multiple fractures, long bones, ribs, any type of any region of the torso. The head will be impacted, arms. A lot of things can be present there. Probably not sharp force trauma, but would be synonymous with blunt force trauma.
Mm-hmm. And based upon the position of the damage on the body, we can gather other information, such as whether the vehicle was decelerating, hitting the brakes, or accelerating, and the front end of the car would lift up and hit the body higher.
Right. Yeah. So directionality is a real important thing that that the pathologist can discern by looking at the bone fractures. He or she can look at those things and get an idea. The anthropologist is interested in the physics or the mechanism of trauma, but the actual crime scene, of course, that belongs to the pathologist and the death investigators. So we kind of fit in, our piece to what they're asking. But yeah, you would expect some, a lot of different breaks based on, speed, deceleration, location of the body and that type of thing.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And whether the body was run over or flipped up into the windshield, based upon the impact and so forth, then you would see associated damage. Now, we have the Locard's exchange principle. And usually if a vehicle is going to impact a person, there's going to be an exchange of materials between the vehicle and the person. And there should be evidence of that vehicle impact left at the scene as well. And I've heard nothing in this case about them finding any broken glass, any paint on the vehicle, from the vehicle on the victim's clothing, or anything like that. These would be all part of the investigation. Hopefully they still have that clothing. So that would be something that I would be involved in. And Barbara, just before we came on the air, we talked about, just in the beginning of the show, we talked about classifying something a homicide. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, as I said, SLED can't do that. Okay. And why don't you tell us by law, who's the only people that can classify this as a homicide?
That would be the coroner or medical examiner. Mm-hmm. And that is based on the autopsy giving us the cause of death, and then the investigation by the police and by the coroner or medical examiner's team. They provide the circumstances surrounding the death. So, for instance, a gunshot wound is a cause of death. But is it a homicide, a suicide, an accident? That all depends on the circumstances the victim was found in. In this case, the cause of death is blunt force trauma. We can be pretty certain of that. But what were the circumstances? You can get blunt force trauma in a lot of different places. Mm-hmm. But one thing I should point out, Ed, that you mentioned is the impact on a person of a motor vehicle. Force equals mass times acceleration. Mm-hmm. And even a car that's moving not all that quickly has mass. And that force against a human being is overwhelming. So we have reports that the injuries to him were blunt force trauma to the head, possibly a dislocated shoulder, and an injury to the hand. So where did the car hit him? Not in the shoulder, not in the hand, and certainly not in the head. If a car hits a person, you have to see something in the legs, the hips, depending on their height, of course. And as you pointed out, if a car is, if they put their brakes on and they begin to decelerate, the front end of the car dips down.
Right.
We can measure, well, you've done this a number of
Yeah.
times. You can measure the height of the bumper, the height of the injury to the person, that wedge-shaped bone fracture, and you can learn a lot from that. But I can guarantee you that this young man was not hit in the head with a car.
You know, it's funny too, because I just want to interject here for a minute. There was talk about blue paint, and there was a blue baseball bat. They were supposedly on a baseball team, and there was a conversation that was brewing online, and this is not from law enforcement, but there was supposedly some blue paint exchange, but it wasn't the car that there was no vehicle obviously recovered. It was a hit and run classified initially, but he was found in the road. His shoes were still on. And it's to my understanding, if you're hit by a vehicle, even at 20, 25 miles an hour, you're kind of like knocked out of your shoes, so to speak. I don't know. I mean, it's not my place to speak about it, but this is some of the research that I did. Ed, you're smiling. And
it doesn't matter how, if you're wearing boots or sneakers, low top sneakers, and you have them all tied up. I've seen it time and time again. You get knocked right out of your shoes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I see the great Dr. Murray Marks. He's also, shaking his head here. There's a lot that is going on here about this investigation dating back to July 8th, 2015 to current day that stinks to high heavens. And we're not going to go into that because that's not what the premise of this show is. But I want to read a statement from the SLED director. And the SLED director sent a statement to the attorney, Ronnie Richter and Eric Bland. These are attorneys for Sandy Smith. This is the victim's mother. And, she's a sweet, really kind woman. And all she's looking for is answers about what happened to her son. And this is the statement. SLED director says, no autopsy is needed to get to the answers. The chief said, if your purpose for your new autopsy is to prove the fact that Stephen Smith was not a victim of a hit and run, you don't need to do that. And this is the statement. I took it right off the SLED website. They posted this back and forth to the attorneys, and it was released by the attorneys representing, Stephen Smith's mom. So that's an interesting statement right there. They're basically telling them, we know, we have information, but we can't release it to you, but you really don't need to do an autopsy, or this could indicate that they don't want them to do an autopsy, but they're going to go ahead and do it anyways. But yeah, this whole case, again, stinks to high heavens, and there's a lot of moving parts to it. There's a ton of moving parts to this thing. But
there's a good point there, and that is, once an autopsy is done, it's done. The evidence is the evidence. You take photographs as you work, and you find what you find. It's how you interpret it that is the issue. So the autopsy that was done initially, if we could look at those photos and see perhaps glass embedded in the skull, in the scalp, if we could see gravel, on his chest or hands or legs, if we saw bilateral wound, fractures of the legs at bumper height, in the existing autopsy, we would interpret it as we saw fit, or as the experts saw fit. So there is kind of a point there that you don't necessarily need to redo it, but it would be very, very interesting to see that original autopsy, the complete file with all the photos.
Yes, and any x-rays that were taken of the bones,
Right.
all of that needs to be looked at, and the clothing needs to be looked at. Like you said, I understand there was no road rash. I understand there was no friction damage to the clothing, the exterior clothing, that would be indicative of being hit by a vehicle and tossed. When a vehicle impacts clothing, such as like blue jeans or something to that effect, sometimes, many times, you'll leave a fabric impression on the surface of the vehicle that impacted the clothing. And again, the clothing would pick up paint and things of that nature from that impact as well on the clothing. And I hear no mention of any of this.
Well, I saw the picture of his shorts. He was wearing, I believe, a tan pair of shorts and a Nike black shirt. So there's pictures that are circulating on the internet, and there's like a little small blood stain on the shorts, but there is nothing what you just described, Ed, on his shorts and the shirt. But my question to you, Ed, and I think most people in the audience will want to know this, and let me know in the chat, live chat here, if you're concerned or you're curious about this. If this incident was classified from the get-go as an accident, is all of the evidence that they collected at that scene by crime scene unit investigators, highway patrol, accident, or however they call, I know our guys is AIS, right? The Accident Investigation Squad. The various units that responded, now fast forward 8 years later, they're now saying it's opened in 2021. They opened it, but they didn't reclassify it. But 8 years later, it's now a homicide. Did they keep his clothes? Did they keep all the evidence? Ed,
I hope so. I hope so. I mean, I don't see it. It was an unsolved case. Even a hit and run can be classified as a homicide, right? So,
Sure.
And it was open. They hadn't identified the perpetrator. They hadn't found the vehicle involved, right? So it would still be an open case, or what we might call today a cold case. Okay, given the length of time, it hasn't been solved, right? It's an unsolved case. Hey, and I would tell you this, I got into a motorcycle accident when I was much younger, and I was wearing shorts that night. Okay, and I went across the front of the hood of the vehicle that I was in the collision with. I left my skin from my thighs to my knee on the hood of that car as the friction as I tumbled across the top of that car. Okay. So I had bits of that car paint in my socks. Okay. So, on my socks rather, and my sneakers. Okay. So, that another example of Lecard's exchange principle. So, thank God all I had was some minor friction burns on my skin, and nothing more substantial.
Right.
Okay. And then I sold the bike immediately thereafter.
Let's move on to the questions in regards to the initial. And Barbara, you've covered this on previous cases with us. So a body is interned, it's embalmed, put in the ground, and they conducted the autopsy prior, obviously. What's left? And I think you and I and Ed had this discussion on the Daybell case with Chad Daybell, as he had said that his wife died in her sleep or woke up, and they took her directly to the funeral home and embalmed her and put her in the ground, and now exhumed her body, and we had this conversation. Mm-hmm. What and I'm going to yield to either one of you guys if you want to answer this. What is a pathologist or an anthropologist or anyone that the attorney's office, they're hiring private people to do this exam, and they're just calling it an exam, so they're not saying what they're going to do. What are we working with here as far as the Stephen Smith in an autopsy going forward? Well,
as Murray pointed out, the state of the body is very much subject to whether or not it was embalmed. And then, of course, there's the conditions of the soil. If he was put in a wooden coffin, that's a very big difference from being in a sealed metal coffin with an over a coffin case. You get much more preservation that way. Temperature, the state of his body as he was interred, all of those things make a difference as to the current state of the body. Also, when an autopsy is done, small samples are taken of every organ. So that's going to be missing. Most of the time, the brain is also removed and is preserved and not put back, because it takes 2 weeks to fully preserve the brain to the point where it can be cut and examined without it falling apart. So most of the time, the brain is not returned to the body, so he will not have the brain. Now, when an autopsy is done privately, as a second autopsy, the new medical examiner, the new pathologist, has the right to ask for the records, the photos, and all the tissue samples that were taken. Those are made into slides, so most places save them indefinitely. So when the word autopsy just means to see for oneself. So it doesn't necessarily mean recutting the body. That's probably not necessary. But it means looking again with fresh eyes at the evidence. Perhaps they'll want to do x-rays that might not have been done during the first autopsy. Whole bunch of stuff to be done here, but it's more than looking at the body. It's looking at the totality of evidence as it was originally found.
And Murray,
Right.
I wanted to see if you can expand on, the study of the bones. Will they, look to have a forensic anthropologist come and look at these remains to look at blunt force trauma to the head? Because they talk about that he had blunt force trauma to the head, a dislocated shoulder, and so forth. Can you talk a little bit on that?
Sure. Well, as Barbara mentioned, that soft tissue can be anywhere. I mean, the ones I've been involved with, many times that soft tissue is completely gone away, and the pathologist says there's nothing I can do. Again, by re-examining, reevaluating the slides and things like that were taken the first time around, that's an important component of it. But and then other times, looking at those bones, looking at those fracture sites again, those things aren't going to change. So whether there's radiographs, initially the body can be re-radiographed and that information can be, brought forth. Again, that's the value of the anthropological component. If the pathologist so desires, to have that included in. Hopefully there'll be one there. Many pathologists obviously know that kind of material, but hopefully, again, that bone trauma is going to be preserved, whereas that soft tissue, it's really a flip of a coin as whether that's going to be valuable or not.
And Murray, sometimes your analysis can also say whether or not a certain instrument was used to cause the blunt force trauma, especially in this case where they now there's talk of a baseball bat being the cause of the blunt force trauma to the head and to, I believe, the shoulder and so forth. So is that correct, that your analysis could assist in that?
Right. The good thing about bone is that it keeps a memory of everything that impacts it. And sure, a semilunar event or instrument hitting a curved surface, bones fracture different ways. I mentioned before the physics or the mechanism of trauma, and a lot of times that can be discerned. So putting an exact weapon like a baseball bat or a tire iron or a fireplace poker against the skull and seeing if it fits, it might, but you might not be able to isolate a certain weapon. But obviously, blunt force trauma can be discerned pretty readily.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, so in my area, I would be looking at those clothes. I hope they can pull them out of storage and then relook at them for DNA, because if this is in fact a staged crime scene and the body was killed someplace else and then picked up and transported to this scene and deposited here, you would think there would be some hair and fiber transfer, there would be some DNA transfer to the victim's clothing, because somebody had to pick this person up, put them in some mode of transportation, and then bring them to this location and place them there.
Yeah, 100%. Hey, I wanted to also say one thing. I watched some of the older clips, and I was talking to Dr. Murray Marks before you arrived, Ed, and I was telling him that, there was some aged film of him on YouTube, and I was looking back some 12 years ago. And, Dr. Marks, you said that, that you talked about the bones and how it kind of keeps a picture. And you actually described bones as a tissue in the video that I saw. And I said to myself, wow, it's like I'm hearing exactly what you said 12 some odd years ago right here tonight. And I think that will be helpful for them, hopefully, when doing this re-examination, because it is really about getting answers for his mother, who is, so desperately seeking to find out what happened to her son and have justice served. And all the different trades will come into play here. And, going back, as Barbara said, and starting this investigation from the beginning is an important part of, being thorough and to see, really, to get to the truth, so to speak. That comment that I had up was from a retired NYPD sergeant And she was given accolades to Barbara because she did have some contact with Barbara. And I'm trying to look back for it. I know, Ed, it was on there and you took it off. Oh, here it is. So she says, Barbara Butcher is a phenomenal leader in the industry. She was a pillar of strength, calm, class, and intellect during 9/11, all the years she served, and now she's continuing to speaking for the dead. Thank you, Antonella. Thank you. She's a retired NYPD sergeant. I worked with her in warrants when she was a police officer. So I kind of got her up and got her promoted to sergeant. Well, wait a minute. She passed the test to do that. So
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Antonella. That's very, very kind of you to say. Thank you.
Yes.
So
guys, can we talk for a minute, Ed, in particular about the actual scene, the roadway?
Yeah, sure.
You know, after I retired from the medical examiner's office, I did a substantial number of civil cases, hit and runs, car accidents, tons and tons of pedestrian accidents, especially in New York. And invariably, there was something left behind on the roadway, whether it was a shattered headlight, a piece of plastic from the bumper, usually glass from the windshield, because when you hit them, they fly up and hit the windshield. So according to Lieutenant Moore, I believe it was from the Lieutenant Moore from Highway Patrol, he said there was nothing.
Yeah, not even tire marks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
No. Yep. Nothing according to his report. I read the same report today as well, and nothing on the victim that would suggest that as well. You know.
yeah. What do you make of the position of the body in the middle of the roadway?
You know, it again, if a body gets hit, now it all depends. Now, from my experience, if a car sees that it's about to hit and then hits the brake, the nose is going to dive. The car will hit low on the body, knock them out of their shoes. The body usually gets projected by center of gravity towards the windshield. And then if the car comes to a halt, then the body will come flying forward off the car and onto the roadway in front of the car.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Not the way it was found there. Okay.
Yeah.
And secondly, if the car doesn't brake and accelerates and the front of the car lifts up, okay, now you have, if you can get that car up high enough, or if this person is short enough, then the center of gravity could be underneath the bumper or underneath the front of the vehicle. And instead of going up, the car goes over the victim and the victim gets churned up underneath the vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
Don't have that here either.
Yeah.
From what I can tell. You know, the stage theory is, I think at this point, is plausible.
Yeah.
I want to play a little piece from Tommy Moore. He did an interview just the other day I believe it was inside the mother, Sandy Smith's home. And it was the first time she met her since 2015, since this incident happened. It was the first time the two of them met. So I want to play this really quick. It's only a couple of minutes. So let's put this on the screen. And this is who Barbara was just talking about, the highway patrol.
Accident reconstruction.
Yep, accident reconstruction.
An oath. I can't walk away from that. Even though that's not my specialty, I can't just walk away from that.
And meanwhile, Stephen Smith's mother, Sandy, was walking those roads back in July 2015, searching for clues.
I walked that 3 miles from where his car was to where the body was, and I didn't find anything, but I was still looking.
He said that it did not appear Stephen Smith was hit by a car. His road rash was minor. His shoes were still on his feet.
I mean, I definitely think he was murdered. There's two things that come to my mind. Either he was murdered there or he was murdered elsewhere and dropped there.
Frustrated, Moore says he took his theories on Stephen's death to the higher-ups at the Highway Patrol.
I felt like the brass, which would be, the people running the Highway Patrol, should have stood up and went to SLED and said, this is not a hit and run. Y'all are asking us to investigate something that is not a hit and run.
He then took the case to the Hampton County Sheriff.
Line by line by line, explained to them why this was not a hit and run and tried to hand them the file, and they would physically not take it in their hand.
Meanwhile, the Highway Patrol's accident investigation team, MATE, kept working the case, but there were limitations.
We had MATE come in and answer some of the questions we had, but we are not trained homicide investigators.
It feels like that's where things started to kind of fall apart,
Yes,
right?
yes, it did.
Because you're not homicide detectives.
Well, I was discouraged about the hit and run thing, but I was glad that somebody was at least, because they did interviews, they did work.
But with little progress and reluctant witnesses, Moore says MATE hit a wall. The case was closed, and that was the status until Maggie and Paul's murders in June 2021.
Since they reopened it, and the support that I have around me just keeps me fighting, and he's worth fighting for.
And Sandy is hopeful for another shot at the truth.
No one can get the answers he's looking for.
So it was a pretty amazing interview that he stepped up and pretty much was loud and clear about, there was something wrong here, and nobody was listening to him. Nobody would talk to him. Now he's retired and he's able to do that. But, again, mother's just looking for justice. Yeah, looking to find out what happened to her son. And it's really sad. It's sad. But we'll see what happens here. They had a GoFundMe, and I think it's over $80,000, probably close to $100,000 now, to help hire experts to come on and help with the examination. And I'm hoping that they can get to the bottom of it. Barbara and Murray, would you guys be kind enough to let me read some of the questions from our audience? Because some of our friends had sent in, I did a little preview show today. I ran out to my car and just did a really quick video, and I asked everyone to send in questions. So I have two sides of a page. I'll try to condense it. And I think we answered a lot of the questions. What do you got up on the screen, Ed?
Well, Rebecca says maybe they should use the MVAC on Stephen's clothes and try to extract some DNA material. I agree 100%.
I'm hoping that the clothes are still available,
Mm-hmm.
So here's one for you, Ed. This is a question coming in from Tina F. And she says, what could be left of the remains and at the crime scene, if anything, 8 years later? How challenging is it to look at any evidence? And we already just were speaking about this, but any evidence this long of a period of time later, if it's in like in a locker or somewhere and so forth, is it still going to be able to? You're still going to be able to look at this evidence, is what she's asking.
Well, there's two areas of evidence that would be needed to be concentrated on here. First, the clothing, and then the pathologist, the body itself, the body and the bones. So that would be the pathologist and the anthropologist. But the scene, I doubt it. The roads could be repaved. Different things could have occurred to this area in this environment. I would have little faith in finding anything 8 years later at the scene itself. Okay. Because first of all, we don't even know if that's the original scene. Like I said, this could be a secondary scene where the body was dumped. So we still haven't identified the original scene where the crime took place. And again, if you do identify the original location where, quote unquote, an alleged crime took place, it's 8 years later.
Right.
Could there still be DNA there? Absolutely. Depending on, if it's indoors or outdoors, but according to witness, I believe the beating was taken outdoors. But anyhow, if you can rely on that information that I've seen in several news reports.
And Ed, do you still think that they would have his car? Is his car still in custody?
Whose car?
Stephen Smith's. Remember there was
his car was abandoned down the road. He was left
with
behind.
the gas cap off. Do you think?
Right, and his wallet inside of the car and all that stuff. I don't think they still have that car in custody.
And his cell phone is missing, and so forth.
But even if you went in the car, but and you got fingerprints or you got DNA of certain individuals, well, that could be explained away. But if you found blunt force trauma or radial spatter from blood spatter from blunt force trauma or something to that effect in and on the car, well, that could be something different.
Right. Here's one for either Dr. Murray Marks or Barbara Butcher, or both. Gene and Fuzzy Doxy asked the same question, so I'm going to give both of them credit. Gene V and Fuzzy Doxy. I love that screen name because it's a picture of a dachshund, and I have a dachshund. Can the previous pathologist be in any trouble if it turns out that the cause of death was incorrect? I'll let Barbara go first because ladies first.
No, not at all. The opinion that is rendered by the pathologist is just that, and it's an opinion. It's based on their training, their experience, and what they've observed at the autopsy. They offer that opinion based on all those things. There's nothing wrong with making mistakes. It happens all the time. It's the willingness to re-examine, to admit that you could have possibly been wrong. That's what's important. To not stand by something heart and soul while refusing to re-examine or listen to debate on it. So no, you can't get in any trouble for that. Many pathologists have changed their minds over the years, some of the best.
Doctor?
I can't do any, excuse me, I can't do any better than that. Barbara said it perfectly. As a pathologist, she knows, so yeah.
Outstanding. All right, this one's directed to me and you, Ed. Do you think Alex Murdaugh would take the blame for a family member if he is trying to protect one of his family members if they're involved in this, because he is already facing 2 life sentences? I'm going to answer that, and I know Ed's got an answer for this. I don't think he would, because he didn't even, at sentence, who's given an opportunity by the great Judge Newman to say, hey, look, you guys got me. And he didn't even do that there. He just denied all the way to the end. Do you think somebody like this will now step up and say, hey, it was me, I orchestrated this whole thing? No, my answer to that is absolutely not. Ed?
Well, he is a narcissist. I had a case, the Kimes case, the mother and son con artists, Santai and Kenneth Kimes. They murdered Mrs. Silverman in Manhattan, but they also murdered a gentleman out in Los Angeles. And the son rolled on the mother on the Los Angeles caper, but in New York they stayed in lockstep. I don't know. I don't think he would. Honestly, I don't think he would. If you can kill your own wife and son, why would you add more time to your sentence and try to take the? I don't even know if son was involved in the beating, although the witness says it was the son. Yeah. Okay, so.
Yeah, this is a less than decent person. So let's move on because I want to wrap this up. Yes.
Ron, I just saw a question in the chat. That's a really good one. And it says, what about the side mirror on a large truck like an F-150? That's something I hadn't thought about. And that's a really good question.
Right, but if you got hit by it, you would think there would be some broken side view mirror left on the road.
Right.
Yeah, or glass from the mirror. Right. I'd have to break. But it's a very interesting question how, if he was walking down the middle of the road and if he didn't hear the truck coming or didn't see the headlights, then it's possible that he could have been smacked in the back of the head. There was a wound on the forehead. So maybe he was knocked to the ground. But I think that's a really interesting point.
Yeah, but you have to look at the geometry, right? That would be Murray's area. Look at the geometry of the wounds that are bone, right? So
here's a question from Rebecca, who has just left a wonderful comment. DutyRon and Ed, Dr. Marks, fabulous. She forgot about you, Barbara. I know that she means you too. So I'm going to add into that comment and Barbara. Rebecca, we love you. And here's question number 5. From an examination, and this is directly to you, Dr. Murray Marks. She even said that you're handsome, by the way, because she saw our last video with you. So Rebecca's been around for a while. So from an examination of the skull, can it be determined what object was used to cause the blunt force trauma initially? Could it be, for example, a cell phone, a bat? from the exam would you be able to determine? Stephen Smith's cell phone was never recovered, allegedly taken by Randy Murdaugh. Again, that's a big alleged, but that was a good question. Can you determine from an examination what type of blunt force trauma, what was used, perhaps? Thank you, Rebecca, for that.
Well, what you can look at as far as blunt force trauma, again, like I say, that bone keeps a memory of everything really well. It does really well with ballistic events, with sharp force, with blunt force. There's a general component of size, measuring, the face of a hammer, baseball bat surfaces, things like that. Transfer of material is really good, whether that's, of course, hair is important, but also paint can transfer and things like that into the cortical aspect of bone. I can look at things and say this could be, but I can't place an exact thing on it. And really, the best thing I have is that I render an opinion, and it's up to the pathologist that I provide the report for them to decide or see if it's going to be something that's credible to their investigation. So, you can a little bit, but not all the way. So that's a really good question. Excellent.
One last question, because I condensed some of them we've already answered. Is there any soft tissue left, DNA and forensics, from the body after 8 years? I know we answered this early on, but this comes in from one of our good friends, Lorna McKenzie from the UK. Thank you, Lorna, for that. Anybody want to take that?
Well, I'll just take the part about maybe getting DNA from the skin, because I saw that in the chat. The funeral home director and those that prep the body, they're going to wash the body down, and even post autopsy, it's going to be washed down as well. Okay, going to restitch up the body and wash it down, give it to the funeral director. Funeral director is going to wash it again and embalm it. So at that point, any DNA that's left there on the clothing or of the victim would be from most likely the funeral people that worked on the body and put the body in the casket if they weren't wearing gloves.
Right. Yeah. Thank you, Ed. Here's another question for the panel. Is it possible to find out drugs / and/or alcohol levels after 8 years?
Very, very unlikely. We go to vitreous first, the fluid in the eyeball. We go to blood. We go to stomach contents. We go to all those things. They're all gone. All the fluids in the body, we're assuming he's embalmed, all the fluids in the body are washed out and replaced with formalin or some other substance to preserve it. So they're all gone. Tissues, no, I don't think you're going to get anything.
Well, that should have been done at the original autopsy.
Absolutely. And we should know, there should be a toxicology report in that original autopsy. Mm-hmm. If there isn't, then that's not good.
Well, I think I'm going to scan quickly the chat before we wrap it up, but I held you guys here for 48 minutes. I'm always not I'm not a man of my word when it comes to time. So that's been established. That is well established with DutyRon, and I won't even let Ed take the hit for that. I'm going to take the hit for that.
Wait, before you go on, I got to tell Murray something. I should have mentioned it earlier, but so Murray, I was in Bangkok on assignment for the State Department. So I bump into a State Department employee who showed me the paperwork that she's donating her body to the body farm. I'm half a world away. I'm 12 hours time difference, and I couldn't believe it. When she heard that I was a graduate of the body farm, she had to come up and show me her paperwork in her phone.
Who knew? She had to go. Yeah. Wow.
And the amazing part of this whole thing is last time we got together, which was over a year and a half ago, and Dr. Murray Marks came on, we were speaking about Brian Laundrie and Gabby Petito. There was numerous people who were interested and asked me. I actually downloaded the application onto my computer and I sent it to them because I didn't want you to get flooded with a lot of emails, Doc. So I kind of headed off at the pass. And I think one of them actually sent me back the confirmation that she did, in fact, sign up. So it's a good thing. And, a lot of people are curious about the body farm and what they do. And there's plenty of videos. on YouTube. If you Google the Body Farm, I think there's one in Texas, Tennessee. Is there one in Pennsylvania, Doc?
There is, and there's there's one in Nevada, one in North Carolina. So
Right.
all they have to do is go to that forensic anthropology website, and they have all the paperwork there. Yeah, UT takes a really good program and have made it very user friendly.
Yeah, and I have that linked in the description here. But if it's all right with you, Barbara, I want to share with the folks your book.
Oh, sure.
So yeah, it's coming out in June. It's available for pre-order. This is my Amazon. So it's on my Amazon and on DutyRon.com. So you can go over here. You can get the Kindle. I recommend the hardcover. There's an audio CD. Barbara, did you do the voice at the recommendation of all of our audience, or did somebody else do it?
Yes, that's what I've been doing all week and all next week. That's why I'm so exhausted tonight. I've been speaking for 5 hours straight all day. So.
My goodness. Well, I want everybody to know I pre-ordered 10 copies of these books, and I'm going to give them away to our community here. So we're going to do a giveaway. I bought 10 copies. I'm waiting for the early release. It says fastest release date Tuesday, June 20th. So if I'm able to get that in June, we are going to do a StreamYard giveaway. It's going to be a random selector. You'll have to be in the chat, and you'll just put in whatever Barbara selects as a hashtag. We could just put what the dead know, maybe, or hashtag Barbara, and I'll run the random selector, and we're going to give 10 books away from Barbara. And here is the title, What the Dead Know. I love it. I love it.
What we find out. Thank you, Ron. That's very, very kind of you. I really appreciate it.
No problem. That's the least that I could do, Barbara. I should have bought 20. Somebody in the chat said, why 10? Get 20. Dr. Murray Marks, I always say this each time that we get together, Ed, myself, and this is the first time we had you and Barbara together. Fascinating, very educational for our audience. Will you come back and visit us soon, Doc?
Absolutely. Anytime.
Yeah. And I can't thank you enough for both of you for taking out the time on a Wednesday in the middle of the week. I mean, I gave you guys a little bit of notice, but I mean, you immediately answered back with Ed. I think I sent you a text message, but Ed was like, he answered me, Ron, because he doesn't like you. He answered me. So Ed gave me the boom right up the pooper. But but I'm glad that you got back to Ed right away. That was great. And it's always a pleasure to have. Listen, again, for the folks who are watching the replay or coming back and watching the show afterwards, Dr. Murray Marks, forensic anthropologist, Barbara Butcher, retired chief of staff from the New York City Medical Examiner's Office, and now we can add on to her long resume, author.
That's right. And you can go to my website, www.barbarabutcherauthor. And the website has some interesting pictures from the old days, and of course, all my DutyRon appearances, and some good information.
And I'm going to link Barbara Butcher, author, in a clickable link in the description, so you can go right over there. All of Dr. Marks's stuff is there. I'm going to have to update it because it's old from the last show, so I'll get some updated stuff and we'll fix it up. But again, on behalf of Ed Wallace and Crime Time with DutyRon, we appreciate each and every one of you here, and thank you to the moderators for keeping the chat classy. We greatly appreciate it. And Barbara and Dr. Marks, will you just hang out and don't run off when we close the show? Because me and Ed want to say something to you behind the scenes.
Okay.
All right, great.
All right. Good night.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Take care now.
Thanks. Bye.